Welcome to the Sinking State. We're so glad you're here with us today. In this episode, we're diving deep into how climate change is reshaping life in Florida. From rising seas to intensifying storms, we're exploring the impact on homes, health, and the American dream itself.
That's right, Catherine. Climate change isn't just an environmental issue, it's personal. It's forcing families to pack up and leave their homes, disrupting communities that have been here for generations.
It is not just about losing homes. Insurance, or the lack thereof, is making it even harder for people to recover. There's a growing gap between those who get to rebuild their homes and those who are left behind.
And then there's the toll on health, both physical and mental. From respiratory issues to PTSD, we'll unpack how these challenges affect Floridians in ways you might not expect.
So, let's get started. How exactly is climate change displacing people? Fabian, you're up first.
Thanks, Catherine. Climate change is displacing people at an alarming rate. Since 1980, Florida has faced 35 major storms, each causing over $1 billion in damages. The intensity of these hurricanes has skyrocketed, with nearly half reaching Category 3 or higher.
Wow, that's shocking, Fabian. Those storms must take a huge toll on people.
Yeah, completely true. The emotional and financial strain alone must be overwhelming.
Absolutely. Some families have endured multiple floods within a few years. It wears them down, forcing many to relocate. And then there's the elderly. Florida has one of the largest senior populations in the U.S. They face unique challenges during emergencies, especially when mobility or nursing home care is disrupted.
That's heartbreaking. But what about other vulnerable groups?
Low-income communities also face greater risks. They often live in flood-prone areas with limited resources to prepare or rebuild. Programs like Resilient Florida are helping, but it's clear more needs to be done.
Thanks, Fabian. Let's talk about insurance. It's supposed to offer peace of mind, but in Florida, it's becoming a complete nightmare.
Yvette, can you give us a specific example of that?
Sure, Patty Dew, an 81-year-old woman, lost her home in two hurricanes, Helene and Milton. She didn't have enough coverage and had to rely on a GoFundMe campaign. Even with insurance, many Floridians struggle to get fair payouts.
That's awful. I've seen similar stories.
And it's not just about payouts. Insurance companies are raising premiums or leaving Florida entirely, forcing more people to rely on the state-backed citizens' property insurance. This isn't sustainable, especially for low-income families who are already struggling to keep up.
That's tough. How does this tie into climate justice?
Climate justice is about recognizing that marginalized groups, that means low-income, Black, Hispanic, and Indigenous communities, are hit hardest. They are more likely to live in high-risk areas and have fewer resources to recover. Without policy changes, these inequalities will only get worse.
So, what can be done?
We need reforms to make insurance more accessible and equitable. Plus, investing in resilient infrastructure for vulnerable communities is essential. And, of course, tackling climate change itself will help reduce the fear of these disasters. So, Sebastian, what's the health impact?
Thanks, Yvette. It's actually significant. Rising heat, worsening air quality, and severe storms causes issues like heat stroke, asthma, and infections. After Hurricane Ian, we saw a rise in Vibrio vulnificus cases. It is a deadly bacteria found in floodwaters.
That's alarming, Sebastian. But what about chronic conditions?
Hurricanes make managing chronic diseases like diabetes harder. Take Carlos Ortiz. After Ian cut off access to Sunnyvale Island, he couldn't get insulin for days, putting his life at risk.
And what about mold?
Mold is another major issue, Fabian. It grows fast after floods, causing respiratory problems. Kendra Elliott, for example, ended up in the ER multiple times after her home was overtaken by black mold.
So, how can people protect themselves?
Well, Yvette, preparation is key. Keep a disaster plan, secure medications, and improve healthcare infrastructure. But we also need stronger climate policies.
Now, let's talk about the mental toll of hurricanes. As PubMed Central notes, disasters are traumatic events that may result in a wide range of mental and physical consequences. PTSD is probably the most commonly studied post disaster psychiatric disorder.
Yeah, living in yearly storms must make that trauma feel constant.
Exactly, Yvette. I read about Alice Pujols. She was a mother from Fort Myers, whose home was destroyed by Hurricane Ian. She spent days searching through the debris, which deeply affected her emotionally.
Wow, that sounds terrible. Did she get any help at all?
Eventually, yes. Trauma focused therapy helped her process what happened, but many survivors focus on immediate needs such as shelter, leaving mental health support as an afterthought.
And for some, therapy might feel out of reach, especially if they are struggling financially.
Right, which is why community support, like counseling hotlines, is critical. Preparing a hurricane kit and planning ahead can also help ease some of the stress.
But what about those facing storms year after year?
That often creates a cycle of anxiety. Even storms warning can trigger PTSD in some survivors. Breaking the cycle often requires therapy and ongoing support.
For anyone listening, preparation and seeking help when needed can make a big difference.
Absolutely. If you're overwhelmed, don't hesitate to reach out for support. So, where does this leave us? Climate change is reshaping Florida in ways we can't afford to ignore. It's not just about losing homes or paying higher insurance premiums, it's about losing our health, our communities, and for some, even our hope.
And while these impacts are devastating, they're also a call to action. Whether it's preparing for the next hurricane, pushing for fairer insurance practices, or advocating for climate justice, we all have a role to play.
Exactly. This isn't just about protecting what we have today, but about fighting for a future where everyone, regardless of their income or background, can live safely and sustainably.
Climate change isn't just an environmental issue, it's a public health crisis, a social justice challenge, and a psychological burden. But together, through awareness and action, we can work toward a solution that protects not only our homes, but our lives. Thanks for joining us on The Sinking State. Remember, the fight against climate change starts with us. Every choice, every conversation, every vote matters. Stay safe, stay informed, and let's keep pushing for a future where the American dream isn't just a memory.
Until next time!
Thank you for joining us on The Sinking State. Remember, the future starts with us.